might be wondering, what is tank time? Tank time is the segment where I get to talk about my tanks. So this week for the inaugural tank time, we're going to talk about all the equipment I have on my SCA 120 gallon. So I met Steve, I think his name was Steve, almost 2 years ago at Reefapalooza in Anaheim. And he works for SC Aquarium. The first thing I noticed about the aquariums were the stands. They had this natural grainy looking wood stand that I'd never seen before in like any other tank. The most attractive thing about it for me are two things. The first thing is the stand, I love it. The second thing is the price point. You can still pick up this entire system for under $2,000, which is fantastic. It comes with the stand, with the tank, and with a canopy, which I'm not using. It also comes with the flexible tubing so that you can plumb it. It comes with a glass sump, it comes with a protein skimmer, and it comes with a return pump. The tank specs itself, it's 120 gallons up top, and I can't remember how many gallons down below. It has an internal weir with 3 bulkheads. It seems like a lot of the higher end tanks nowadays are going with a rimless style, but this one does have a Euro brace. So if you're looking at an Innovative Marine, a Red Sea, or a water box, you'll see that the silicone lines are computer done, and they are just so clean. This one appears to be done by hand, so it's not quite as clean. One of the downsides of this tank that I have found and that I have replaced is the sump. I'm just not a big fan of kind of bulky, big glass sumps that don't have the baffles in quite the right place for what my needs are. You know, the refugium's not quite right. I don't really like the auto top off. So I got rid of that sump, gave it to another hobbyist, and I went ahead and purchased a custom acrylic sump, which I'll show you in a second. But enough about the tank. Let's start at the top with the lights. These are the Photon V2 Pluses. They're from an East Coast company called Reef Breeders. This is a 48-inch Photon V2. And if you were to go with some sort of Radion, you would need multiple fixtures, which would cost you well over $1,000. But I think, as of now, this 48-inch fixture is around $700, which, yeah, it's still expensive. It's certainly not a budget light, but it's probably about half the price of some of the more expensive lights out there. They're not perfect, don't get me wrong. My favorite thing about them is their sleek look, and I like their wide LED spread. The main downside about the Photon V2 Pluses is currently there is no way to control it with your phone. You have to use a Wi-Fi controller. It comes with a controller. It's not the easiest to program, but once you program it, you can set it and forget it. For heaters, I use 2 Eheim Jaegers, the 250 watt version. I actually just put them in my weir because the water line stays relatively high, so it's fine. So I now have 3 wave makers. The 2 wave makers that I have, that I've had since the beginning, I love. Again, it's from the company called Reef Breeders out of the East Coast. Logan's the owner there. And they're the RP-Ms. I think they're still like only $130 a piece for a pump that puts out 2,500 gallons per hour. That's pretty impressive. I currently have 2 of the RP-Ms, one on the back on each side, and they circulate the water in this direction. But I needed another pump to be able to circulate the water from side to side. So for that, I recently got the maxspectgyre 330 with the controller. It is a beast. I have it on the opposite end, and it puts out so much flow that I actually can't run it at 100%. The last piece of equipment I use on the top is this Tunzi Aquawind. I like it, but it doesn't work for what I want it for because check it out, look at this. See this mount? It has to go on the edge, but if you have a Euro brace system like I do, it just doesn't work, so I literally have to just lean it on here. It's very quiet, so that's a good thing, but it doesn't put out a lot of flow. So if you really need to cool your tank down a couple degrees in a hot desert summer like here, this probably won't do it by itself. I use this and another fan, which is a lot stronger in my sump. Let's start with my filtration method, okay? The SCA PNP system came drilled with 3 bulkheads, so I decided to go with the Herbie style, which has an emergency overflow, a primary overflow, and a return. This is my second attempt ever at hard plumbing. The first attempt was okay, but I learned a lot from it. So what I used here, that's blue Schedule 40 PVC. A few different places sell them. And then for like all the elbows and the T's, I use Schedule 80 primarily because I like that gray color. And then I use the really, really expensive unions, gate valves, so on and so forth, all Schedule 80. Again, I like that color. Probably the total cost, if I remember, of doing this entire hard plumbing job myself, $200 and $300, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way. The sump I use in my 120 gallon is called the Leviathan Reef 40, and it's from another East Coast company called Acrylic Habitats. Your first stage back here is your overflow stage, then it goes over into your filter sock, through your filter sock into the large protein skimmer reactor stage, over to a refugium stage, then again over into a bubble trap, and then you have your return pump. And it also comes with an additional auto top-off reservoir, which is awesome. It's really well done. Look, they even did a little custom job for me. Can you see it there? Is it gonna focus? Look at that, my first fish tank. No complaints about this. I think these retail for somewhere around $500 or $600. They also do a lot of custom jobs as well. Skimmer, I just use the SCA skimmer that came with the system. It is not my favorite, but it works. It does a decent job, came with the pump. The really kind of crappy thing about it that I'm not loving is this right here. So the connector, how you connect it down to here, is just really janky and pops out all the time. And this adjustment knob, look at this, when you pull it out, it just comes out. So you can't actually tell how far open it is, how far closed it is. It gets knocked out frequently, so it's not my favorite, but you know what? It does the job and it works just fine. I have a manifold, so I actually use, which one? This manifold spot right here to run the reactor. Let me see if I can reach for it. Hold on one second, everybody. Oh my goodness. It's currently running, and it has GFO in there. That's really heavy. For refugium lights, I couldn't tell you what these are. They're some sort of Chinese-made grow light that I got on Amazon. They come in these 3 black strips. You can adjust them for blues, reds, whites, $25 I think they were. They do the job just fine. For my return pump, I go with this J-bow pump. Now you might be wondering, why would you go with a J-bow pump and not something like a Vectra or something more fancy? And the reason is I try to use a lot of products that beginners could use that don't have a lot of money. And it only comes in at like $130. So you can actually save quite a bit of money going with a J-bow pump, and they're just fine. This is the Toonsy Osmolator Auto Top-Off unit. I have the auto top-off pump in there. The other section right here, which is both the float valve, which tells you when the water level gets too high, and then it has the optical eye, which is what activates it to begin with. I have had this set up for 5 years, and this little pump has never gone out. It's $200. I 100% recommend this for anybody. Are you ready for my last piece of equipment? It's not fancy. It is the Holmes Blizzard. But using this little guy, I have it connected to my aquarium controller, and I go like this. Watch. I take it and I rest it on top of the lights. This, combined with the Toonsy Aquawind, reduces my tank temperature by 2 degrees. So it's ugly, but it works just fine. Last up is my custom-made plywood spray painted control board. I don't have any woodworking skills, so I just had some extra plywood lying around, and I just put it together and I made this control board really just as a place to hide all the wires, and I was able to mount controllers on here. So starting over here, this is the J-bow return pump controller. This is the Toons Osmolator controller for the water level. Then I have my 2 RP-Ms right here. This is the Gyre 330 controller. I always recommend this Bayite temperature controller, and I've had this Bayite now for a couple years, and it hasn't crapped out on me yet. You know something? I didn't realize how much equipment I had in the SCA 120 gallon, but that's it. First tank time, done.